I wasn't supposed to be there. She didn't know I'd flown in. Renee had told me the trip was just for her and the girls. No husbands, no calls, just yoga, sun, and sangria, she said with a wink. That was 4 days ago, but I wasn't buying it anymore. When her location pinged in a completely different city from where she claimed to be, I booked a one-way flight, didn't pack a bag, and didn't tell a soul. And now here I was. Floor 9, room 903. I'd bribed the hotel concierge with $80 and a fake last name. Said I was her brother and worried. He looked me up and down, then slid the keycard across the marble counter. I entered quietly. The room was empty. The air smelled like perfume and peppermint gum. A half-eaten chocolate bar was on the nightstand. 2 champagne flutes, both used. One with lipstick, one without. Her phone charger was plugged in. Her clothes were draped across a velvet chair. A receipt from a beachside restaurant was peeking out of her purse. I walked to the bathroom, and that's when I saw it. Her wedding ring, just sitting there in the porcelain sink. Not on a towel, not in a jewelry box. In the sink like she'd thrown it off in a rush. Like it was a prop she didn't need anymore. That was the exact moment something in me broke. I stared at it for maybe 5 full minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just felt hollow. Like someone else's life had just slammed into mine, and all I could do was watch. Then I heard voices. 2 of them. One hers. The keycard beeped. My heart started pounding. The door swung open. Laughter. Then silence. She saw me. She dropped her purse. The man behind her froze. He wasn't one of the girls. He was barefoot, tanned, holding a hotel key of his own. And my wife? Her eyes weren't wide with guilt. No, they were wide with fear, but not because she was caught. It was because she realized I wasn't who she thought I was anymore. I picked up the ring, looked at it, then said the one thing I'd rehearsed for years without ever planning to say out loud. You took this off for a weekend. I took everything off for good. And I walked right past them. But that was only the beginning. Because what I did next made her wish I'd just divorced her quietly. I didn't go far. I didn't have to. I waited downstairs in the hotel lounge, ordered a drink I wouldn't touch, and watched the elevator like it owed me answers. 10 minutes later, she came down. Not alone. He was still with her. Same smug expression, same quiet arrogance, as if I were just some awkward fan interrupting their getaway. Renee didn't sit. She stood across from me, arms crossed, trying to act composed, but her hands trembled slightly. "What are you doing here, Curtis?" she asked, her voice clipped, as if I were the one who betrayed her. I let that hang in the air for a moment, then slid her hotel receipt across the table, the one from the beachside dinner she hadn't mentioned, time-stamped the same night. She told me they had room service and a movie night. She glanced at it, then rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, you flew across the country because of a receipt. You lied." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. You always overreact." "And he?" I nodded at the guy still standing behind her, arms now folded like some cheap nightclub bouncer. "Is he part of the yoga retreat?" She turned back to him, then back to me. "He's a friend. From college. He's going through something. He needed your hotel bed." That cracked her. Her composure slipped. She looked around, noticing people watching us now. She dropped her voice to a hiss. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, I wasn't. Not this time." I pulled out my phone and opened the cloud account she didn't know I could access. I showed her a photo I had just downloaded, one she'd taken the previous night. It wasn't scandalous. It was worse. It was intimate. Her, wearing his hoodie, laughing, his hand brushing her hair away like it belonged to him. Like she belonged to him. She'd never smiled at me like that in years. And seeing it hurt more than I was ready for. Her face went pale. "How did you get that?" she whispered, her confidence caving. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence between us was loud enough now. The other man stepped in. "All right, man. This is getting weird. Maybe just take a walk, yeah? Cool off." That's when I stood up, and I finally looked him in the eye, not as the fragile, ignored husband I'd been for years, but as someone who knew far more than they expected. "You should ask her about Denver," I said. His face twitched. He looked at Renee, confused. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, because she didn't know I knew about him. The first one, the one from last summer, the one she swore never happened. I leaned close and said it low, just for her. "You lied about him too. And now you've stacked lies so high, I'm starting to enjoy watching them fall." I left before either of them could respond. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene, but I had already sent the photos to my lawyer. And Renee? She had no idea that the next 48 hours would cost her everything she thought she had under control. I didn't sleep that night, not because of heartbreak. That part had already bled out somewhere between her fake yoga stories and that look she gave him, the kind of look I used to think was mine. No, I didn't sleep because I was too busy pulling every thread of her double life until the entire thing started to come apart in my hands. I sat in a cheap motel across the street, the kind of place that doesn't ask for a credit card, just cash and a nod. It smelled like bleach and regret, which felt appropriate. I connected to the busted Wi-Fi, pulled out my backup drive, and started copying everything. Screenshots, location history, receipts, cloud backups. It was all there. Because when you live with someone long enough, you learn their digital rhythm. You learn where they forget to log out. At 3:14 a.m., I found the folder that sealed it. It was labeled work stuff. The irony made me laugh out loud. One sharp, humorless bark in the middle of that stained motel room. Inside, not spreadsheets, not documents, photos, voice memos, a few videos. And in every single one, some version of the man I saw with her tonight. Same watch, same lazy smirk, was either in the frame or behind the camera. One clip, her singing to him in the hotel bathroom mirror. Another, a voice note, her saying, "I wish Curtis would just let go already. He's so damn needy." I sat there for 10 minutes staring at the file. Needy. After everything I'd carried for her, her debt, her therapy bills, her mother's hospital stays, I was the needy one. That's when something in me clicked. By morning, I'd already sent a small packet to her company's HR department, not out of pettiness, but because I knew who her lover was, their newest regional director. Married, 2 kids. The company had a strict internal policy about relationships, and both their names were all over reservation emails, travel receipts, and even matching wellness retreat bookings. I didn't write a long note, just attached the files with a subject line, policy violation, documentation enclosed. 12 hours later, I got the alert I was waiting for, the read receipt. She still hadn't contacted me. No call, no text, not even a half-hearted apology. That told me everything. She was betting I'd keep it quiet, that I'd lick my wounds in private, like always. She forgot who she married, so I paid one more visit. Not to her hotel, but to our house. The one I'd paid 80% of while she criticized my lack of ambition. I waited in the car until her Uber arrived. Watched her step out with that same girl's trip, energy, sunglasses too big, heels too high, phone glued to her hand. When she opened the door, she froze. Because I wasn't inside, but someone else was. A woman, mid-40s, sharp suit, company badge. Renee turned slowly, saw me leaning against the car. I waved. She ran back to the porch, whispering, arguing. But it was too late. HR already knew. And now, so did someone else very important. The regional director's wife. Because she was the one standing inside our foyer, holding a folder full of evidence I'd anonymously mailed the day before. Renee had no idea what to say, but the woman inside, she just smiled, handed over the wedding ring Renee left in the hotel sink, and said, "Looks like you dropped this." Then she walked past her like nothing. I didn't even follow. I just got in the car. Renee didn't call after me, because for the first time in our entire marriage, she was the one left standing in silence. 3 days passed. 3 days of no contact. Not a single call, not even a fake excuse text. She ghosted me like I was some stranger she hooked up with once and hoped never to see again. And maybe, in her head, that's what I'd become. A weak, inconvenient past she could discard quietly while moving on to her next carefully filtered Instagram chapter. But I wasn't staying silent anymore. She just didn't know it yet. By that point, the HR report had exploded into a full internal investigation. I knew because someone inside the company, a quiet analyst named Jake who once grabbed coffee with me at the holiday party and told me I was the only normal spouse there, forwarded me an internal memo. Her affair wasn't just breaking policy. The guy she was with had approved a promotion for her 3 weeks earlier, one she conveniently never mentioned. And it wasn't just frowned upon. It was potentially illegal. Favoritism, undeclared conflict of interest, misuse of corporate funds for retreats. Her little fling wasn't just a personal failure. It was corporate napalm. But Renee? She had no idea any of this had reached me. So imagine my surprise and amusement when she finally came back. She showed up at my apartment. Yes, I'd moved out while she was busy playing hotel wife, dressed like she was going to a brunch she wasn't invited to. Tight blouse, subtle makeup, a look that screamed strategic regret. And, of course, a shopping bag with some peace offering inside. That used to work on me. Not anymore. She knocked twice. I let her wait. When I finally opened the door, she smiled like nothing happened. "Hey, can we talk?" I tilted my head. "About the other night? Or the other guy? Or the HR report?" Her smile twitched. "You really went that far?" she said, as if I'd committed some unspoken betrayal by not quietly absorbing hers. "I did," I said. "And you should check your email. Your company just made it official. Your promotion's been rescinded pending investigation. You and Mr. Rolex are on leave. Unpaid." She laughed. Actually laughed. "You're being dramatic. They'd never fire both of us. They need him too much." I didn't blink. "He's not at the company anymore either." She stopped breathing for a second. I could see it. That flicker of real panic. It wasn't about me. It was about what she was losing. The shiny office, the quarterly bonuses, the free travel. Her whole self-image was built on being untouchable. And now, she was dangling. She tried again, softer now. "Curtis, we can fix this. Maybe we needed this wake-up call. We were drifting. I just wanted to feel wanted again. You barely looked at me anymore." There it was, the shifting blame. Always back to me. Always wrapped in half-baked vulnerability, like she was the true victim of her own choices. I stepped aside. "You still want to talk? Come in. Someone's here you should meet." She blinked. "Who?" "Mr. Harold." She paled. She knew that name. He was my lawyer. A man she once called paranoid when I insisted we have him draft a prenup years ago. The same prenup she'd sworn was just paperwork we'd never use. But now he was real, sitting in my living room, waiting with a thick manila folder on his lap and a calm, almost surgical smile. She didn't move, so I looked her straight in the eye and said, "You took off your ring for the weekend." I took off my silence for good. "Welcome to the part where I stop being your backup plan." She finally stepped inside, but the confident smile never returned. Because what she didn't know, not yet, was that the ring wasn't the only thing she left behind. She also left a trail, and I wasn't done following it. She sat across from my lawyer like she still had leverage, like she was just here to negotiate terms with someone too soft to go through with it. Harold didn't speak right away. He just opened the folder in his lap and started flipping through the papers, calmly, methodically, like a man setting the table before a brutal dinner. Renee shifted in her seat, trying to regain control of her body language, but her hands betrayed her. They kept twitching. She wasn't used to being in the room without the upper hand. I stayed standing by the window. I needed the distance. If I sat down, I might have yelled. Or worse, started asking why again, a question I'd already learned would never bring a satisfying answer. Cheaters don't confess out of guilt. They confess when consequences get louder than their lies. "Let's just get to the point," she finally said. "You want a divorce? Fine. But don't act like I destroyed you. We both made mistakes." That line, that infuriating, generic, pre-packaged line. We both made mistakes. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to ask which of my mistakes matched hers. Was it paying off her credit card debt? Was it canceling my annual hiking trip to stay home with her when she was going through something? Was it trusting her when she said the late meetings were real, the perfume wasn't new, and the ring just slipped off in the ocean? But instead, I kept quiet, because I didn't need to say anything. Harold reached into his briefcase and pulled out the second envelope, the one I hadn't planned to show her unless she tried to play innocent. He slid it across the table. Renee didn't touch it. "What's this?" she asked. "Go ahead," I said. She opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, screenshots, a partial bank statement, GPS data. One document in particular caught her eye, a hotel invoice from 6 months ago. Not from Miami. Not from any trip she ever told me about. It was from Denver. Room 709. A long weekend during which she'd told me she was visiting her cousin in Maine. I remember because I bought her a new suitcase for that trip, one she used to sneak away with a man she'd met at a networking event. Not the one from Miami. A different one. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Not at first. Then, "You hired a PI?" I didn't answer. "You spied on me?" she snapped, suddenly louder. "Do you even hear how messed up that is?" I stared at her. "You disappeared from my life a long time ago. I just followed the sound of the door slamming behind you. Harold didn't flinch. He handed her a pen and the first page of the separation agreement. She didn't sign it. Not yet. She tried a new tactic. Curtis, she said, her voice shaking now. This doesn't have to be ugly. You don't have to throw everything away. We can handle this privately. Quietly. I can. I can step away from work. We can rebuild. I looked at her for a long time. You stepped away a long time ago, I said. You just thought I wouldn't notice. Then I reached into my coat pocket and set her wedding ring on the table, the one I'd picked up from that hotel sink days earlier. She stared at it like it burned her just to look. Maybe it did. You left this behind, I said. But what you really lost, you're only beginning to feel it. She didn't reply, but in her silence, I saw it, the unraveling. The realization that the man she thought she'd always have in her corner had finally, fully disappeared. And I wasn't done yet. Because if she thought the second envelope hurt, she had no idea what was in the third. I didn't hand her the third envelope right away. I just let it sit on the edge of the table like a loaded weapon neither of us was brave enough to touch first. Renee kept glancing at it, then back at me, as if her silence might make it disappear. But it didn't. Nothing was disappearing anymore. Not the lies, not the receipts, not the versions of herself she thought were hidden just out of reach. Everything was on the surface now, and she was finally realizing how much of it was rotten. She leaned forward, trying to sound calm, but already unraveling. Curtis, what is this? You said you wanted answers. You got them. So why keep going? I stared at her, not with anger, with clarity, because I thought the cheating was the worst part, I said. But it wasn't. It was the way you looked me in the eyes afterward and still thought I was too weak to ever hold you accountable. She said nothing. She just looked away. For once, her usual comebacks didn't arrive. I finally picked up the envelope and tossed it in front of her. Go ahead, I said. Let's see how much you still think you can salvage. She hesitated, then opened it. Slowly. Inside were three things: a printed group chat transcript, a signed statement, and a photo, one she never expected me to have. I watched her eyes skim the first page and widen. Her face drained. Her fingers started to tremble again. The chat was between her and two of her closest friends, the ones who'd supposedly gone on the Miami girls' trip with her. Only they didn't. One of them confessed everything in a late-night call with me after the fallout started. Said she felt guilty. Said she didn't know how to look me in the eye at dinner parties anymore. So she forwarded me the chat. In the messages, Renee mocked me. Not just the marriage. Me. She called me domesticated, pathetically loyal, and boring. She joked about how easy it was to convince him I was still in love. There was even a voice note, which I didn't include, where she laughed and said Curtis would forgive a funeral if I told him I was grieving pretty. Then came the statement, notarized, from a former co-worker of hers, a man she once accused of being creepy when I asked why she blocked him. Turns out, he wasn't the problem. She was. He signed a statement describing their affair in detail. Dates, times, places. And most damning of all, the fact that she told him she was technically separated at the time. A lie. We were still sharing a bed. And the photo? It was from a private party she attended 2 months ago, one I was explicitly uninvited to because it was just work people. She was sitting on another man's lap. Not touching, not kissing, but comfortable, familiar. She wasn't even wearing her ring. When she finished flipping through it all, she looked up at me with the hollow expression of someone who had just watched the glass casing around her carefully controlled world shatter into dust. I was going to come clean, she whispered. No, you weren't, I said. You were going to wait until you got caught, and then hope I'd be too hurt to fight back. She stood up, fast. So what now? You ruin me? You take the house? Empty the accounts? What do you want from me? I stood too, not to threaten, to walk away. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. I want peace. And the only way to get it is to make sure you never have access to me again. She opened her mouth like she had something to say, but nothing came. She wasn't used to being the one left behind. But now she was. Not by accident, not by weakness, but by design. What she didn't know was that before I left the room, I'd already set the final card in motion. One last piece she never thought I had. And when it hit, it would expose everything. I didn't storm out. That would have given her too much. She didn't deserve a dramatic exit. She didn't deserve any more of my emotion. So I just walked, slowly, silently, out of my old apartment and left her standing in the middle of a room filled with pieces of her own mess, each one now labeled, time-stamped, and undeniable. But what she still didn't understand, what she never understood, was that I wasn't the man she used to manipulate anymore. She took off her ring to live like she was single. I took off my mask to show her how much damage the quiet ones can do. And I wasn't even finished, because there was still one thing left. One final, heavy truth that had been gnawing at the edge of my mind for months. A theory I hadn't wanted to test until now. And once I did, it changed everything. It started with a joke. Some offhand comment she made 6 months ago while we were folding laundry. She laughed and said, "Can you believe people actually do DNA tests just because their kid doesn't look like them? Insecure much?" Back then, I laughed with her. But I remember the way her eyes shifted after the joke. Like her mouth had gotten ahead of her brain. I wasn't laughing now. Our daughter, or the girl I'd always believed was mine, was 5 years old. Bright, sensitive, left-handed, unlike either of us. I'd never doubted she was mine, until Renee gave me reason to doubt everything. So before confronting her, before even mentioning it, I did what I had to do. Quietly, carefully, I mailed in the test 3 weeks before the Miami trip. The results had arrived 2 days ago, sealed. I hadn't opened them until last night. And when I did, I stared at the page for hours. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. It was like reading a death certificate for a part of myself I didn't know had been on life support. My world didn't just shift, it dropped out entirely. And still, some broken part of me whispered, maybe it's a lab error. Maybe there's a mix-up. So I tested again. Expedited. Same result. 0. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat in the dark and rewatched every moment Renee ever smiled at me while holding that little girl, knowing what she knew. She let me fall in love with a child who wasn't mine, then let me raise her like I was disposable. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. Of time, of trust, of fatherhood. So I sent one final package. Not to Renee. To him. Not Miami guy. Not Denver guy. The first one. The man I now suspected was the real father. A man from her job back in our 2nd year of marriage. He had no idea. I sent him the test. The timelines. Everything. I even included the contact info for my attorney, in case he decided he had rights to establish. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was just done. Renee didn't call that night. But the next morning, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I didn't even speak. The voice on the other end just said, "Curtis." I got the envelope. I didn't know. She told me she had a miscarriage that year, that the baby didn't make it. He sounded like he was in shock, like someone had just turned on the lights after 5 years of darkness. I gave him a time and a date to speak with my lawyer. Then I hung up. Renee's little empire of half-truths was collapsing fast now, and she had no idea how many doors I'd quietly opened behind her. She thought I was trying to hurt her, but I wasn't. I was just done shielding her from the consequences of her own story. And the final consequence? It was already on its way to her doorstep. The last time I saw Renee in person was a week later. Not in court, not at the apartment, not in a shouting match like you'd expect. It was in a quiet, sterile office where 2 lawyers sat between us like emotional airbags, ready to absorb the crash. She looked smaller, not physically, but like someone who'd been stripped of her performance. No charm, no practiced guilt, no tears that came on cue. Just a tired woman sitting across from the husband she never truly understood. Her voice was hollow when she asked, "Why did you do all of this, Curtis? You could have just walked away." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break. I just said the one thing that finally made her flinch. "Because you didn't just lie to me. You lied for years and smiled through it." She didn't have an answer, because there wasn't one. She signed the papers. No alimony. No drawn-out court battle. The paternity results had removed any leverage she thought she had. The HR scandal, the affair, the financial records, all of it had taken her mask off piece by piece. In the end, there was nothing left to weaponize. I walked out of that office into the cold December air and didn't look back. Not once. But this isn't a story about pain. Not anymore. 3 months later, I moved into a new apartment across the river, smaller, simpler, and silent in the best way. I went back to hiking again, started therapy, reconnected with friends I'd ghosted during the worst of our marriage. Turns out, when you stop apologizing for someone else's chaos, people actually want to be around you again. I didn't date. Not at first. I needed to relearn how to live without walking on eggshells. But eventually, I met someone. Not on an app, not in some rom-com twist. Just naturally. A coffee shop. A bad pun. A real conversation. Her name's Elise. She listens when I talk. She doesn't flinch at silence. She doesn't make me feel like I'm too much for asking questions. And that little girl, the one I raised for 5 years, she'll always have a part of my heart. But I stepped back completely. It was the hardest choice I've ever made. But not every role we play is meant to last forever, especially when the script was built on a lie. I left quietly, with dignity, and I made sure she'd be supported through her real father, who now knows the truth. As for Renee, I don't keep tabs, but I hear through whispers that she lost her job permanently. Her name came up in compliance meetings. The promotion stopped. The invite stopped. The mask cracked, and there was nothing behind it but someone too clever for her own good and too careless to protect what actually mattered. She thought taking off her ring gave her freedom, but I took off my mask and found something better: peace. I don't hate her. I don't wish her pain. I just hope she finally sees what the rest of us already learned. When you lie to protect the life you think you want, you often lose the one that loved you as you were. And me? I'm doing just fine.